You're listening to From the Chair, and I'm your host, Mike Hamilton. Join us each episode as we talk to athletic directors from across America. We're going to talk about topics like leadership, career development, issues of the day, and I can promise you we're going to have some fun along the way too. So sit back, listen in, and let's dive in. Let's go. Welcome in today's episode, my friend Dwayne Peevy, who is the Vice President and Director of Athletics at DePaul University. Dwayne, great to have you with us.
Thanks, Mike. Glad to be on.
You know, it seems like, I know time flies in these chairs. Somebody said one time it's if dog years are 7-1, AD years are at least 3-1. And with that being the case, you've now been in the chair since August of 20. So how's it going here? You're now a year plus into the job.
It's going great. And I would agree with those odds because I fault you every day because you were one of the first people I talked to. I don't know if you remembered it when I was back at the SEC office, convincing me that I need to get on a campus and talking about getting on this trek. So we're going to get a lot out of this podcast for sure.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Well, congratulations to you. And I'm so glad you're there. And I know you'll do a phenomenal job. Hey, look, let's just hit it early here. Early in your narrative around you going to DePaul, I read somewhere where you talked about dreaming big. And I've seen some of your staff members quote something along the lines of dreaming big. And I know that that's important to you. You've been in places where you do dream big. And so as a start, let's just talk about what that means to you personally, but also what it means now that you're in the chair at DePaul. What does it mean to dream big?
I think it was one of the reasons that I wanted this job. Obviously being the deputy at Kentucky for the last 7 years prior to coming to DePaul, I was in a pretty good position. So I wanted to make sure that if I had a next school or place I went to be athletic director, that they were willing to dream big with me. And so I talked about that during the recruitment or the hiring process, so to speak, about where it could go. I mean, DePaul was very attractive based on the potential it had. Obviously, we hadn't done as many things at that major Big East level of where we could go, especially in men's basketball, fundraising, some of the other things that we can do facility-wise. And so I needed to make sure going into this that the administration and the support would be there and that they were willing to think about something that maybe doesn't seem as tangible right there in front of them. And it was very funny because as I went into my press conference, I really wasn't planning on talking about dreaming big or some marketing moniker or anything like that, but it was just really who I was as a person, kind of how I got to the spot that I was in my career, and the reason that DePaul was a great fit for me because they were dreaming big too, and really needed someone to kind of help get that message out and take us to the next level together. And so I think that was the thing that resonated with me. That gives me energy now. The fact that I have a lot of my teammates here on campus, my peer group in campus partnerships or on my staff that are willing to do that as well. And I think the fact that it's allowed me to add more people to my team because they want to be here and they're seeing those external outreach messages and want to be part of that growth. And so that's exciting for me.
That's great. And we're going to talk a little bit about your future at DePaul and what you've got ahead of you. I know you're just wrapping up a strategic plan and some other things. Right. But first, I want to go back to, you played baseball at Montevideo. You went to work at the SEC office. I think Commissioner Kramer actually hired you, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
That's where we got connected and got to know each other early on. And then, through different SEC events. And then Mitch brought you on board at Kentucky. And you and I share an affinity and love for Mitch Barnhart, as many guys do. And Mitch is a guy that humbly goes about his work and doesn't ask for a lot of attention, but you can look in the marketplace today and see the many people he's touched based on the number of folks who have been athletic directors, are athletic directors, or serving in senior positions. And so I want to touch on that first as we look at your career track, just your time with Mitch and the fact that he's now got, I'll call it a big tree, right? There are a lot of folks who have come through his shop, and I want to know specifically what he did to prepare you, the opportunities that he gave you to prepare you for this chance that you now have.
Well, I think first and foremost, it was just the opportunity to like you talked about my background, being at an NAIA school that transitioned to Division II, got an opportunity to go to the SEC office. Mitch came in at the same time Mike Slive came in. So I was had been at the SEC office a couple of years, and I was on the communication side. I wasn't, I had this dream that I told Mr. Kramer when I got hired. during my interview that I wanted to be a Division I athletic director someday or commissioner. And so, yeah, that was in the back of my mind. But until I got to Kentucky, that probably wasn't a real idea. And I think following Scott Strickland there, who obviously was taking that trek, going to Mississippi State, being in administration, maybe that opened Mitch's eyes that that's something I might be interested in. But we never had that conversation early on. I was too busy trying to, in year one, I had Billy Gillespie as a second-year coach, and we ended up making a change after that year, shifting to John Calipari and keeping that pace with a bunch of freshmen right out the gate as the sports information director. But the thing I'd say the most that Mitch did for me is that he saw that potential in me before I even had that conversation, before I even went to his office and say, this is what I want to do, and how can you help me grow, and what are the next steps I need to do that you hear so much. He saw that in me, and the chance for me to be from media relations to being over external to having a chance to be the men's basketball administrator after Rob Mullins and Mark Coyle had left Kentucky in probably a year and a half time, without me even thinking I was up for that, that was the thing that I owe him so much on. To see that potential of what I was able to maybe accomplish someday. He had that faith in me, and obviously I wanted to achieve those goals, but I wanted to make him proud too, and make it where he made the right choice. And so putting my time and effort, being an administrator for men's basketball, overseeing development at that time, really put me on a trek to be the deputy the next year. And then doing that for 7 years, getting to learn from him every day and making all those decisions on the job in the deputy role, it's made the transition from this role a lot more seamless on the decision-making process side for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely informative to your selection at DePaul for sure. I'm curious, when you talked about, and I'd forgotten this, that you were not only overseeing development, but also serving as a basketball administrator at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two heavyweight jobs within an athletic department.
Yeah.
And particularly when you talk about basketball at the University of Kentucky, and particularly when you talk about your head basketball coach at the University of Kentucky. So before we talk about Cal and your time with him, tell me how you found a way to balance those two very significant jobs in terms of time management and that sort of thing.
Well, the funniest thing is that when Mark Cole left in December of 2011, went to Boise State to be the athletic director at that time. We were in the middle of our championship season. Anthony Davis, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. We were in the middle of that championship season. And I was I was over media relations at the time. So that was my role in basketball. And so to shift in the middle of the year to being over the development side and the men's basketball administrator within that same season. So technically, I still was a sports information director and the basketball administrator and overseeing the development office for the first time within that same championship season. As you know, all those things are huge in those pieces. And I remember we actually had Anthony Davis poster night. We were playing Florida. We had lost one game at that point, and the announcement came out, press release and everything, and everybody's coming to you. Now, keep in mind, inside, I'm overwhelmed just thinking about all this. I'm carrying my wagon of the sports information behind me because I'm still doing that job. I'm still doing the book at the games, and I'm the men's basketball administrator, and overseeing development. So on the road, and then the Final Four in the national championship game, I'm at center court doing the scorebook still, right? And so that actual night, I actually ended up in the hospital, and they said it was stress related because my blood pressure shot up. I just think the moment that all that came to fruition, that I became, final, in the post-game press conference, I just got a little lightheaded. I ended up being nothing wrong, but it was just to show you how much, right? And then I think what it was, it taught me I had to let go. And my career was built on so much success in the communications, sports information, media relations side of things, that it was hard for me to let that go. But the good thing is that visit to the hospital let me know, okay, I got to give up something. I don't think Mitch had plans for me to keep doing that, but allowed me to let that go, which allowed me the room to grow, to really dive into the development side of things, get a lot more experience in that piece because I hadn't done any of that prior, and really be a more innovative sport administrator for men's basketball to try to stay 2 steps ahead of John Calipari, which is a challenge every day. And I think
Yeah.
that's probably what gave me, that kind of molded me to who I am. I mean, Mitch giving me that. Think about it. Kentucky men's basketball, to be able to say, hey, Dwayne, like, I want to see you grow in every way you can in this area. Having autonomy to work directly with Cal on the scheduling, the budget, you know, the decision making with staffing, contracts, all that stuff, all the experience that he gave me during that time period. I'm not going through that the first time right now. I've been doing that for 8 years. And I
Yeah.
think that's the advantage, that being at Kentucky, whatever role you're in, Mitch has that trust in people to allow you to grow on site where he can help you versus being out there in the non-Kentucky real world for the first time and just stumbling through a lot of those things for the first time ever.
Yeah. So obviously with Cal having had the success that he's had and the sort of iconic image that he has in basketball,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, I think that it's interesting where trust is placed. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, you know, it's not uncommon for a basketball coach to begin to trust someone in media relations or begin to trust their trainer, or they brought somebody with them that's been on their basketball staff before or whatever. So you've got this guy who has won at a very high level, and you're at Kentucky, and where basketball is like again king. How did you and Cal develop that trust relationship that allowed you to begin to do all the things that you've just referred to that you began to do with Kentucky basketball?
Well, ironically, it began from the start. When he first got there, me being his SID, as you said, I didn't even know if he was bringing somebody with him then. I didn't know if I would even survive it or in that role. You know, it was that much uncertainty. We met before, but not really had any long conversations or anything like that because, you know, once the hiring process went pretty fast. But the thing that united us, Mike, the thing that did it was Twitter. So 3 weeks into his start date, we started his Twitter account. So basically, I was managing Cal's Twitter. I think it was like April 23rd, 2009, right? So I have to now talk to him 3 to 4, 5 times a day, just about whatever's going on, not about what I needed to talk to him about or what he really wanted to talk about, just so he could feed this. You know, obviously he didn't know how to manage it to do it manually at the time, so it was probably best for everybody that there was some kind of buffer system based on some of the things he wanted to do. But we were doing everything from motivational Mondays to, you know, I mean, but it really, keep in mind, he hadn't even coached a game at Kentucky, so we have that whole spring and summer that I'm talking to him 3, 4 times a day. And so we became really close during that time period, building up this Twitter account to over 1 million followers before we played a game. And I think one, the Memphis situation culminated that summer as well. And to know that I, along with others, were fighting for him through that, really developed a strong relationship that still lasts to this day. And so as I went from SID role, which obviously there was a lot of, you know, we might bang heads on different things, or, you know, he knew I was looking out for his best interest. And for me to become the administrator, he knew that he wasn't my boss. You know, Mitch is my boss. I'm representing both thoughts, trying to do the best for Kentucky basketball, which obviously helps him. I think it just really allowed our relationship to be one where, hey, it grew to one where I could tell him, like, Coach, I think you really got this wrong. And maybe he might not tell me, okay, but I knew that it resonated with him because we had a very trusting relationship, which allowed us to get through a lot of things, whether that was contract negotiations or things of that nature, or budget situations, or the stuff with scheduling. It allowed us to get a lot done together.
Yeah. So everybody has to find their place on Twitter, right? And you've got,
Right.
you've got Chris Del Conte and Greg Byrne who are active on Twitter, and then you've got, guys who never appear on Twitter, right? So where are you in that mix? And if you're utilizing Twitter, how will you use Twitter to be the AD you want to be at DePaul? I'm interested in that.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of Twitter because my students pay attention to it, to the point where if we have somebody have an outstanding performance today and I don't tweet anything about it within some point, 24 hours, I'm probably getting a Teamworks message from somebody saying, hey, I noticed you didn't put anything out. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that they're paying attention to it. And
Yeah.
I think for me early on at DePaul, especially during the pandemic where we had no events and fans, it was a way to humanize me to our fan base, to people knew who I was. I meet a lot of people that know me from social media or maybe a webinar or something I've done. And it's kind of helped, that they know me just as a person. They might see my family on Facebook. They might see pictures on Instagram, or they might see the things that I'm tweeting out all the time. And so it gives them some sense of who I am. And I'm able to build up some level of normal equity before, you know, we stop winning every game in men's basketball. So
Yeah.
I think that's part of the process to me. I want them to know me as a person just as much as they know me as the administrator in the job. And I think it humanizes it a little bit, but it just gives me a platform. Coming from Kentucky, I had the largest social media following of anybody on our campus. So that's part of the thing too, is that I become a vehicle for other people. So if I'm retweeting something or I quote tweet somebody else or I like something, it gives it a lot more push than normally what's going around in our building.
You sound like a communications expert, man. A little background in there, right?
uh,
Hey, so one more question about Cal, and then I'm going to transition to
okay.
DePaul. I remember when I went through my interview process, and granted, I had been at Tennessee for 11 years, but one of the questions I was asked in the interview was, okay, you've been a peer or a supporting cast member here, and now all of a sudden you're going to be a leader and coach with Coach Fulmer and Coach Summit and Coach Peterson at the time. How do you transition into a role where you've got these in the SEC in particular, but candidly everywhere, these kinds of jobs are kingmaker type jobs. And then, so you've got a guy with a high profile in Coach Cal. Obviously, Mitch is ultimately his boss, but you're charged with being his basketball administrator. What did you learn from that as it relates to now how you will lead your coaches on DePaul's campus that you can pull from that time with Cal?
I think the biggest thing it gave me is credibility right away. I probably didn't realize the level of it coming in, but the coaches would mention that all the time. I think they assume, okay, that they knew I was pretty closely working with John Calipari, who obviously a Hall of Fame coach. It's not, the assumption from the outside is that's not easy. So I'm more, I would say I'm a coach's athletics director. I don't, maybe I can't define exactly what that means, but I'm used to having a strong relationship with the coaches. And even if I go back to Kentucky, it wasn't just with John Calipari. I would, outside of Cal, I probably had a pretty good relationship with most of the coaches at Kentucky. Just because, as you know, when you're the deputy, you get all the stuff when they don't want to quite go to Mitch yet. They don't want to go to the boss yet, right? And so you get a chance to keep up with them and be a problem solver, which has been great for me. Because now, not only do I know a little bit about basketball from what I've learned in my time at the SEC in Kentucky, but I'm trying to be on the men's soccer selection committee next year because of my role working with soccer. Or I feel like I can resonate with all our coaches because of my experience at Kentucky, because I had a relationship with every coach that sport we have here, we had at Kentucky, and I had a relationship. I've been involved to some degree, whether that's assistant coaches' salaries or budgets or travel conversations or just normal things that's going on in the industry. That has really resonated and helped me here. As far as I'm the one that's bringing to our coaches at DePaul, my goal is I want to bring the idea of thought to you of where we need to go or what our needs are versus you bringing that to me. And I know there's going to be times where they beat me to the punch, but that was the challenge I had with Cal every day, and it worked for me. Like, stay ahead of the ask, think bigger picture, because that made him feel that I had value to the program every day because I was bringing ideas and thoughts versus him always have to be asking something. I got to say yes or no or make it happen. And so that's what I try to do with my 10 head coaches here too, is that this is what I'm planning to do with the budget. What do you think? Versus them asking me for it. And I've done that in a short period of time with, say a coach like Doug Bruno that's been here a long time. And I'm trying to learn a lot from a veteran coach like him. but also I can bring some things that he hasn't thought about or asked me about. Just like moving to Wintrust Arena, we moved all our women's basketball games out of the Sullivan Center, out of McGrath Phillips Arena on campus to Wintrust Arena um, in South Loop. That wasn't something Coach Bruno asked for or women's basketball asked for. That was something I brought to them that I wanted to do, and they were on board with it. And so that's the challenge I think that has really helped me with dealing with Cal and other coaches at Kentucky that has resonated and really helped me in my experience as a new AD.
So speaking of Coach Bruno, that was on my list to ask you about. Obviously, he's had sustained success at DePaul over a long period of time across,
Right.
different league structures, different, he has had the same AD until recently because of the history there. But, what have you seen from him that has been informative to your learning about DePaul and what it takes to be successful at DePaul? Again, he's very highly regarded, right, in postseason play and all that kind of stuff over history. So I'm curious if you have some takeaways early on from learning from him.
Well, I found myself saying some of the Brunoisms already, and I think that's good. I think that's good for our relationship. But the thing that about Coach Bruno, because he's the greatest, he's been a men's basketball assistant and also been an administrator. He's been an associate AD. So he gets other pieces, not just his job as the women's basketball coach. So he's able to see a little bit of the side to help Coach Stubblefield with some things as a new coach. Then he's got this new AD and Dwayne over here that he can help with. And like you said, he's been through a few ADs at DePaul. Obviously with Jeannie being here, a good part of that, who actually played for Doug. But he's been with other ADs too, and a lot of the stories and things that he'll tell me are brought about by some of the experiences we have together about some of the things that, it reminds him of a lot of things that he's dealt with prior in his career. And I think the challenge, we'll get together. We've got together a few times and after work, and I'll tell him, I'm picking his brain about how do you have sustained success? How do you get people to understand what excellence means and getting them to step up to your level of it? I'm trying to figure out how can I help him more, and I'm thinking more big picture because he's hey, I have what I have, and let's go do everything we can with what we have. I'm trying to get him to expand his horizons of where we can go with some of the things, thinking about Wintrust, how we travel, what our budget looks like, how we recruit, just challenging him every day, because I feel like if I can bring value to him in that way to make him think even bigger than he's thought before, then imagine where we can go. And what I told him is that, hey, I plan on us working a long time together. And let's go to our Final Four and go try to win a championship. Why do it if we're not trying to go to that high level? And I think that speaks to him because he's somebody that's pushing himself every day. He's got more energy than you can ever believe. And I feel like if I can be in this, as long as he has and still be motivated to be great, then if I can get halfway to where he is, I think that'll be a hell of a run. And I think that's the thing that resonates. He is really good with our young people, really connected to the alums, really iconic in the Chicago area. I can't run into anybody in town of adult age that haven't either been to Ray Meyer camp or Doug Bruno camp, right?
Yeah.
And so he's a legend, but the fact that I can learn something from him and hopefully just get him to think a little differently, to realize that this can be really fun over the next 5 to 10 years. That's what I'm trying to accomplish in my daily interaction with Coach Bruno.
That's great. So look, let's talk about men's basketball for a second. Okay. And this is not to discount any of your other sports because they all matter, right? But
right.
Coming to DePaul, I thought you were a great hire because of your history at Kentucky. And DePaul is known as a basketball school, right? You don't have football, you don't have baseball. Right. You've got your other sports. You've alluded to that are successful. Women's basketball certainly is and has been. And men's basketball, for a guy like me, I particularly know of the success of DePaul's men's basketball program. You mentioned Coach Meyer. I mean, some phenomenal teams. You've been ranked number 1 in America, so you can get there. You can do it. I'm curious as to your thought of a pathway towards, let's call it national championship level success. And certainly part of that is not to lead the witness, but part of that's the league you're in, Part of that is the
Right.
city you're in. As you now have been there and had 18 months or so to view the landscape, is DePaul still a program where you can launch to national championship level achievement in men's basketball? And what are you trying to lay down the tracks to help to help get you back to that place?
Mike, you're right. I mean, that's why I wanted the job. You know how you go around and you poke your head into a few jobs. This is the first job where I pretty much put all my eggs in one basket. I told everybody I could know that I was trying to get this job. I tried to get as many people to help me with this job because I wanted to realize quickly on the front end, is it what it seems like from the outside? Can we, answering your question, can we really get back to that national level of prominence in men's basketball at DePaul? Because we need our one revenue sport to help lift all our boats. You know, we've had success in women's basketball. We went to 4 Women's College World Series in softball. But to get us to that level that where we can really resonate, we need a men's basketball back. And I definitely think we can. And I think you pointed to a few things. Being in the Big East Conference is a heck of a head start. Because if you can be competitive in this league, you can be a NCAA postseason nationally ranked team, right? You don't have to win the league to go to the dance. You don't have to win the league to be in the mix. You can be middle of the pack in this league and be significant enough to go win it all. And so it's not as far away from us to be competitive, to have a chance to really start playing for, weekend after weekend. I think the other piece is Chicago. Obviously, it's a huge recruiting base. Nobody, when I was doing this coaching search, I said, to me, if you haven't really recruited Chicago, I'm questioning if you're really a recruiter. Because, hey, you might not have anybody, but you should at least be in Chicago because of the amount of talent that's here. But I think the thing that you alluded to with us being number one in late 70s, early 80s, getting to a Final Four, the Ray Meyer years, Mark Aguirre, Terry Cummins, Rod Strickland's, the alumni base is such a huge asset for us, is that the people here, my generation in Chicago, all remember watching DePaul games. They were the team before Michael Jordan and the Bulls. They were the team. And even myself in Birmingham, Alabama growing up, the first basketball game I recall watching was WGN DePaul basketball because there wasn't a lot of basketball on television like that. And I think that's why you have a lot of people here. 85% of our alumni base works in Chicago. You have my generation here all has an affinity for DePaul that we can pull into. And now we have to get the generation of our student athletes, prospective student athletes, to understand that DePaul is successful. Because my kids, I have a 14-year-old and a 21-year-old, they never heard of DePaul. And so that's the part that we have to bridge the gap to, whether you're in Chicago or not, to understand where this program's been, where it's going. We're off to an undefeated start so far, but we've got a long road ahead of us. I feel like we can get there sooner than later because of all those assets, because of being in the Big East, because of our Fox deal and being on FS1 pretty much every game, every night, and being in Chicago where people love basketball. And we're in a pretty new arena in our 5th year at Wintrust Arena. We just had the Chicago Sky win a world championship in that arena. I saw it packed for games 3 and 4 of the WNBA championship, and with a bunch of people that had never been to Wintrust Arena or never been to a Sky game. So now it's just a matter of getting our work done so we can reap some of those benefits too.
I love that, man. I love that, the vision casting for the arena and knowing what it can become for you guys. So Tony's your guy, and this is your first big hire on this platform.
Right.
And we've talked about how important basketball is there. What did you see in Tony that says he's the one?
Well, it was interesting because I talked to 37 coaches, Mike. That's probably overkill. If I'd have talked to you before that, you would have told me to limit it. But I started out with a list of 20. I had 5 associate head coaches on it, and Tony was one of those 5. Never met Tony before, but somebody had looked at it, and I knew Rob Mullins at Oregon had promoted him to associate head coach like in December before. And so I had, a group that I wanted to talk to, and obviously Oregon made the tournament. I had a bye in the first round, and I had a bunch of Zooms early on. It's kind of like speed networking or whatever. And Tony was one of those. And his personality, his passion, his energy resonated. And just like a lot of people, I had a lot of really good Zoom interviews, and it was like, okay, I marked him as one that I wanted to talk to again. Because I kind of, we were doing them so fast, you run out of time. We didn't really get into some of the X's and O's and things of that nature, but I knew it was somebody right away that really wanted the job. Two, I knew he had the energy. Just kind of doing my background on him, was a really big relationship guy, great recruiter. And I knew he had been a veteran assistant, not just hadn't been a head coach. I mean, he had been an assistant under Dana Altman and Mick Cronin in his last two stops for almost 20 years of that. And so I knew a lot about him. That interests me in him. But then they kept winning. And as I'm going through the process, I'm narrowing my group down, met with an initial group in person, and then made a decision whether I wanted to make a decision where I was, or let's see for another weekend. And so that was one of the things that the search firm DHR International, Glenn Sugiyama, helped me with, is that, hey, if you feel good about where you are, you'll feel good about where you are in 2 more days. So let's see how the weekend plays out in the Sweet 16. And all of a sudden, Sweet 16, Elite 8 weekend, you got a bunch of more coaches you can talk to that were interested in this job. This job had enough affinity that I could talk to a lot of people. I had a couple people that wouldn't talk to me. They were on the edge of where I was from a budget standpoint or where we could get. But most people I could get a conversation with. And so Tony was one of the ones that I got to talk to after they lost in the Sweet 16. And he actually was close to driving up Chicago, hoping he can get a conversation with me, but decided to get on the team charter back to Oregon. And about when he landed, I think within 90 minutes, he had to hop on a plane to Chicago to meet with me and my president and some others. So that was probably the first move. He should have went with his gut instinct, but really impressed me in person. I was just really impressed. The things that I saw early continue to resonate. He was really good on the X's and O's compared to some of the peers that were there. And that was one of the things you don't get if he hasn't been a head coach, right? You don't really know, breaking us down, taking us through offense, throwing a lot of scenarios, having some answers to that. And honestly, in my sit down with him one-on-one, it just felt right. It felt like someone that I could battle through this with. We've kind of got to dig out of a little bit of a hole here, and from a men's basketball standpoint. So I needed somebody that was okay with where we are, but could help me grow it to where we needed to be, versus just take the job because of where they think we can get it to. I needed him to be comfortable grinding a little bit. And here I was, a first-time AD. I wasn't against a first-time head coach either. My coaching friends would tell you, hey, go get a head coach, right? I don't think I can find many of them that didn't tell me to go hire a head coach if I wasn't talking about actual names. But it felt right. I slept on it, came down to a final decision, and went that direction and haven't looked back. I haven't, and I haven't second guessed it once. He's been above and beyond, even better than I thought as far as a fit for what we needed here. And he's a tireless worker. I mean, he didn't even go back to Oregon after the press conference for about, maybe 4 weeks. He just stayed here and hit the pavement and started visiting with coaches, and finally went home to Oregon and get his stuff so he could officially try to move here. And so it's been a great start for us. But the thing that's really resonated is just with these students, just the energy and grit and the passion that they play with. It resonates from what he gives to that every day. So we got a staff that provides that energy as well. I think it's been a good move for us, and I'm looking forward to our future together.
Well, look, I think you hit on a couple of really important points. I mean, there's just who they work with is important, right? Their recruiting plans, those kind of things. But at the end of the day, cultural fit is paramount, and the ability for you to, when you check your gut at night, for you to feel like, hey, this is somebody I can lock arms with and we can go to work. When it's all said and done, that's what is going to matter, right? Because you're the one that's going to have to work with him. And I think that's an important piece of the puzzle. So just a couple quick things to close out. Okay. You've now been there for a little bit. I know you've got a tight-knit family. Your daughter, I think, transferred back to be near you guys, and your son's in school. And so what we're coming out of the pandemic. What have you guys been doing to get acquainted with Chicago as a family?
Well, really it really kind of opened up to me in May when kind of some of the restrictions dialed down. I got a chance. I was kind of stuck in this office. I was coming in this office every day when no one was coming in here just to dive into the work. But you're right. So my daughter Caitlin transferred from Kentucky State to DePaul in the spring quarter last year. My son Braden started as a freshman at DePaul Prep this fall. My wife Allison, she's getting her master's in film and television at DePaul, and so they're totally
You're locked in, man. You're locked.
Yeah, that's what I figured out is that I better get this job right. I better start working pretty hard because they're not leaving Chicago. They love it here, and I finally got a chance to see it late spring and the summer. And so what we did, we kind of did a staycation. We didn't go anywhere all summer. We wanted to enjoy summer in Chicago because everybody talks about how great it is. And man, it doesn't last long enough. It went by so fast. But I'm a half a mile walk into work in Lincoln Park. It has been phenomenal start, and I'm excited. We got a lot of work to do, but it's what drives me every day because the energy of this place, the people. We've got our new marketing campaign talking about blue grit because it's really kind of the grit of the people of Chicago, a bunch of hardworking individuals that are used to everything not being handed to them. That's kind of what we're all about. And I love my staff and these students. And, I've got a presidential change coming. We're going through that process right now. I didn't count on that on the front end, but basically that's just kind of been the hand I've been dealt in my career. And so I'm going to miss Dr. Esteban, his wife, Joe, but I'm looking forward to the challenge of new leadership and where that's going to take us as well. And so, this has been a great move for us. I even like the cold weather. I'm okay. Even last late January and February, we got about 24 inches of snow. The only thing I'm not used to is it doesn't go away like I used to when I was at Kentucky or Birmingham.
No 60-degree
it just stays
days
there
in the
and
middle
becomes
of
like a dirty block of ice. But I've made it through that, so I'm still surviving.
Well, at the risk of putting you on a spot, my final question is: have you decided on your favorite Chicago deep dish pizza yet?
Oh, that's tough. So I'm still in the tasting phase of that. So I came in Giordano's and Illuminati's and what I had before. And obviously, like Lou's is like 2 blocks away from my house. So I try not to do that too much. But like Pequod's Pizza has been a new one that I hadn't had before. You have to try that. What I did find out, Mike, is that I had to get on a better diet regimen because eating steak and deep dish pizza all the time I wasn't going to make it. So I've got back to my pre-Chicago weight now, and now I'm working on trimming from there. So I had the pandemic deep dish pizza start, and but I mixed in a little. I still like thin crust too, but there's nothing like Chicago pizza. So I've sent along a little pizza to some of my friends, and so I'll send you a little care package too, so you won't miss out as well.
That sounds good. Well, hey man, it's been great to be with you today. I really look forward to getting up your way and sitting with you and catching up. We've got a lot more to talk about at some point, just based on the discussion we've had here today. But thanks for joining us. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Mike. And I'm a big fan of the podcast. I listen all the time because we're all learning, right? We're all educators, but we're all learners. And so I appreciate you doing this and having me on.
It's our pleasure. So you've been listening to From the Chair. I'm your host, Mike Hamilton. Today's guest has been DeWayne Peevy, who is the Vice President and Director of Athletics at DePaul University. So glad to have had Dwayne with us today. We hope you'll subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and you also take the chance to view it occasionally on YouTube. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.